Hello there! I figured I'd do an actual coffee chat since I haven't done one in a long time, and I'm just finishing some stuff up for my album, so I'm still busy, but a little bit less so right now, and I figured I'd try something out that I haven't done before. So, with my album coming out, I've been trying to make all sorts of content to attempt to promote my album. And I have absolutely no internet traction, so some of it's doing good, some of it's not doing so good. But something I wanted to try out is I want to do some song breakdowns. So what better than to break down a song that I already have? And if I have like 5 people who regularly listen to my music, but all of them absolutely love this song. So today, the whiteboard's gone, because today I'm going to be breaking down Killer. I'm going to be breaking down Killer into all of these parts and going through why I think Killer is a genius song. Not that I'm a genius, just that Killer is a genius song. The first thing that we're going to break down is the riff in the very beginning of the song. Because the first thing we hear in the song is the clapping. Then we get this hard hitter of a riff. Altogether, we get a couple things here in the riff. So we get our traditional power chord, just nice, simple, rocking. But then, what we have here is the pentatonic and one note that makes the blues scale. Is that we get this 7th, 1st, 5th, 4th. And then the second time we go up to our 3rd. And then the last time, we go down, and then we have this chromatic passage where you have. So we end up walking right down the scale. Next thing I want to talk about is just the verse riff, because the verse riff is really simple. It's just this E power chord. But there's one very special thing, which I mentioned in my guitar versary, that makes this riff. Is that you have those power chords, but right in the middle there's something that I'm adding that makes it just a little bit brighter of a chord. That's a little bit of a secret, and I'm thinking that I could probably get some people to pay me for it on Patreon, but either way, go figure it out. Learn your thing. Learn it yourself. In the second part of the song, after we get the synth figure, the riff comes back, but we got a little bit of a tweak. We got a high energy tweak here. We got that is just a natural harmonic here on the 5th fret. So on the G string, we have our volume on, and then we lightly touch a harmonic there. And we let that ring out. Now we're going to break down some of the harmony in Killer. So most of Killer, so like that first riff, is just an E minor, very clearly E minor. So for that, we actually have a couple interesting things, even within just being an E minor. The kind of crux of this song, in terms of its theory and how it works, is it takes the E minor chord and changes how it wants to be used. In our verse melody, which I'm singing Killer, we end up actually using 2 different scales here. So the vocal melody follows the Dorian scale and then adds a note from Phrygian at the very end of it. And then something else we have in the verse here, briefly talking about the rhythm section. The drums are doing a clave in the bass, which sounds like. So it's a little bit similar to the intro, but different. The verse is just an E minor. But then the interesting part is when we get to the pre-chorus. So we get to the pre-chorus. We have E minor, A minor, D sus2, G, and C. So this is a real theory-heavy section. So some people, most people, probably won't understand this. But I'm going to try to break it down as simply as possible. Is essentially, we're between keys right now. So right now we are solid, our ear is solidly in E minor. So when we hear these chords, we hear these chords in E minor. And so for those who know the number system, we have a minor 1, minor 4, we have a flat 7. But the interesting thing is this is a sus2 chord, so we don't have the third in that chord, at least not on the guitar, and I don't think in any of the other instruments. We don't have a third here, so technically we don't know if this is minor or major, because that's the only difference between hearing it in E minor and C. So having that sus2 chord means we can hear it as either one. And then flat 3, and then our flat 6. But if we were to think of this as in C, we have our 3 chord, our 6 chord, and then 2, 5, 1. 6, 2, 5, 1 is a super common cadence in classical and jazz music. Is that this is very easy to hear. And so when we hear that, we already know we can go to C very easily. So we get to the chorus is well in C. And in C, we have what's called the Royal Road chord progression. So the Royal Road is the major 4 chord, the 5, the 3, then the 6. And so you can hear that here in F, G, E minor, A minor, and then we usually get a passing G back down to our F. And then the second time it comes around, we get F, G, then we stop on E minor. So I thought of this while I was writing the video, and I'm so glad I did. Right in the middle of our Royal Road, we get a Royal Road block, and we stop right before the last chord, which is just jarring, and we end up stopping in this one place and staying there, which is also where our ears been for most of the song. And so we sit there, and that's also when the choir kicks in. The choir is singing a gigantic E minor chord. So it's me singing like, I gotta remember the notes of it. Anyway, but it's the notes of an E minor chord, like all stacked up across a couple octaves. And so we hit that, but then we come back up to the top, we hear it again, and then we bring it back down, and we stop here, and then we're back up into the verse. And then when we come around for the chorus again, we go through this whole thing and then drop off with this huge scream at the end. And then we're just holding that chord. Last part we have here, which of course is the part that I forgot to write down, is the synth solo. So after the giant scream after the chorus, we go into this synth solo, which is just transitioning between a D and an E minor. We haven't heard this movement before in the song. And then, after we've done that twice, we play the first half of the verse melody, and then we hold the note. And we're sitting on this chord. And then when we finally break back into the riff, we finally get our E minor. Now, we're going to talk about the lyrics in Killer. So, the lyrics in Killer tell a story, and this is all kind of weird because I'm just piecing together the story now. In my mind, when I was writing this song, I always felt like the lyrics were like a cry of warning and a confession from a man on death row. And so that's where I kind of going back and looking at the song, rereading the lyrics and whatnot, I'm like, ooh, there is a story here. And I didn't realize it. I wrote it as a song about dumb archetypal monsters, and I wrote it specifically and tried to be in time for Halloween. We need to start at the very beginning of every story. First, we're killed with stones is an allusion to the biblical story of Cain and Abel, is that the very first murder was when Cain killed his brother Abel. If you look at the furthest back stories we have, is that that's the first time as we were first killing each other with stones. And then, not of man, they're from the stars above, is an allusion to the fall from heaven. Is that it's a biblical story of Satan and the demons falling from heaven, and that they are now on the earth. Getting to the pre-chorus, we have those who kill must hear my fate. And so this is really the start of this cry of warning. I must beg forgiveness, for I am a sinner. I cannot amend this, for I am a killer. This is the man recognizing his own wrongdoing. And he knows that he needs to beg in order to be spared eternally, because there is no way that he can make earthly amends for the things he's done. The second verse is, living flesh and bone, hooded figure that your soul you owe. 1,000-year-old count, flee from hellhounds, for they let them out. So this second verse is the part about archetypal monsters. So this is just about classic storybook villains and monsters. But the part that gets into the story of this man on death row is that this man sees the monsters that await him on the other side. He fears the horrors of hell more than he fears the noose, and more than he fears death. So when we finally get our last chorus, it ends with that primal scream, because it's signifying this man is in an earnest plea for mercy. And also that scream is signifying this recognition of himself being a primitive, animalistic person. After the scream, we get the synth solo, repeating the melody from the verses. But this time we have those different chords, and this time it's bittersweet and nostalgic, regretful, and even a little angelic. But then we cut it off early. We don't hear our resolution. We hold that until we get our final breakdown. And in this final breakdown, the man gives out his last plea. God's spirit in me, take control. I've seen into hell, so I know my role. I was made to hurt, so I understand. I'm less than a beast, but more than a man. And then we have the guitar solo, which, at least to me, is a perfect reflection of this man's desperate cry for help and his fight against the evil inside of him. This song just happened to me, but everything that happened had a meaning. I didn't orchestrate this story, really. I am only now realizing that it's there. But while I was writing it, I knew that that's how this song felt, and that's the point of perspective it was being written as, is this man who's in a desperate fight and a plea for his life. And maybe this final verse, the line, I was made to hurt so I understand, I used that language once before in one of my coffee chats to talk about, I feel like there's always been this sensitive side of me, is that I was made to be a sensitive person so that I could feel things more strongly and so that I could understand people. But something else that looking over the story has made me think is that I'm a large person and I've always had a well of anger inside of me. Maybe that's not the best term for it, but I'm drawn to angry and aggressive music. But because I'm a large person and I've been in the gym and whatnot, and I know how strong I am, and I know that I could genuinely hurt people, but it's because I was made to be this sensitive person that's kept me from it. And that this dynamic that's in Killer is that this man knows that he's a terrible person and he can do terrible things, but he also knows that there's something inside of him that's way more than that and way better than that. And so he cries with all he has to save that bit. So that's what Killer is to me. I want to do more stuff like this, because these songs mean so much to me. And I really hope that people understand some of the depth that goes into these. And I want to I want to share that with people, and I want people to know that. And if that means I have to spell it out for them, maybe that's how it goes. Maybe that's how I get attention, and that's how I get people to pay attention to these songs, is that I really go into this and show people that there's so much to this music, and that there's something here to connect with, both on the surface level with just how the music sounds, but then what all goes behind it. I want people to see that so bad. Farewell and have a fabulous day. I hope you go listen to my album, and I hope you draw from it a bunch of these things that I pointed out from Killer, and I hope you go and find both the meanings I have, but the meanings that are there for you in each of my songs. So, farewell and have a fabulous day.